Hello, welcome to this class on the regenerative paradigm, a new way of seeing from surviving to thriving in health, life, and society. This is the shorter version of a talk that is an hour-long presentation that is more of a taster to get the gist of the regenerative paradigm. And if you want to go deeper and explore further, talk with me about the longer version of the presentation, which lasts for about an hour. So I'm Elizabeth. I'm a somatic transformation coach trained in neuroplasticity. So somatic is means it comes from the word soma, which means of the body, which is a form of doing. If you haven't heard of it, it's a form of healing therapy work that actually heals us from the body up, and it does include cognitive processes and emotional processes that sort of follow. But they follow the rhythm of the nervous system and of the body's pacing and timing and methodology of going about uh, the healing or the transformation process. Um, I'm an energy healer, a former forest school teacher, a nature mentor, a former interpreter, a regenerative wellness practitioner um, that has learned a lot through personal experience, as well as studying all the new methodologies that are coming out that tap into the primal or ancestral ways of healing um, and and how to apply them through modern methods. I'm a sociologist, really interested in culture and the big picture, consciousness explorer, and soul initiate or mystic. And here's just a short taste of some of the pictures of me building my life's work, from working as a nature school teacher with children to being a part of ceremonies and community group experiences with intentions to make change in the world, to living amongst Indigenous people and learning about their ways of life, to having really profound, being able to witness really profound healing experiences with my own clients in my private somatic coaching practice. And I wanted to back up and just frame this entire body of work, this entire presentation with a larger why, the larger why, right? And this is an orientation of sort of this present moment in time and history on the planet, in which many systems in our world are falling apart because they become disconnected from the rhythms and principles of nature. So, the systems, which I will go through here in a moment, um, of every kind, from the large to the small, are going through a kind of breakdown. And in a lot of transformational circles, the concept of it, there's a breakdown to break through. And so it's really useful to kind of see what is the thing that they have in common that is leading to this breakdown. And the way that I view that is really that there's been a straying from the rhythms and principles of nature. In fact, one way that trauma can be defined is as that rupture between, um, that rupture which leads to ways of operating that are ultimately unsustainable. So living in ways that are strayed away from nature's rhythms and principles, which we see across all of these different systems. Another way to think about the compounding of trauma, this rupture that has been carried on through several generations, is as also a pattern of soul loss, or loss of the sacred. Now, I had a personal ego crisis that came after all of my studies and experiences, as shown previously, that took things to a whole new level for me. On the left-hand side is was taken in the fall of 2021, shortly after my father died unexpectedly, suddenly, in the COVID ward after being a fairly healthy, on the verge of retiring 64-year-old who went into the COVID ward and ended up on a ventilator after a couple of weeks and never made it out. This tree was holding me through that process of witnessing my father die and breathe his last breaths. On the right-hand side is a few months later, the following year, after my dad had died and after I had gone to get the COVID vaccine, which promptly triggered a mast cell activation and an extreme neurodegenerative disease process that took hold in my body, to the point where a moment like this one, in which I was lying and taking a nap with my cat, was actually a relatively good moment, because the pain was such in my body that I actually hardly was able to even sleep for many weeks. Now, my experience actually became an initiation for me. I was not able to find support through modern medical methods to heal my body. I was also not really finding, I want to add this, a lot of support to heal my troubled heart and spirit, because my grief process around my father was quite complex and not simple. So, because I couldn't find the supports in the culture around me, I had to rediscover my natural blueprint to regenerate my body and my heart and soul. What I mean by natural blueprint is, one way you could think of it as the nervous system, but in a deeper sense, it's also that part of us which is connected to nature's rhythms and patterns, and that knows how to heal and that knows how to source the answers in one's life, both in terms of medical answers and relational answers, and all of the questions that we might have to ask that maybe are not really fully supported anymore by the broken systems in our culture. And so, as I went through the process of reversing my neurodegenerative disease and healing myself, which was quite a miraculous process and required a lot of faith building in areas where I had profound doubt, I learned a few lessons. And one is that the microcosm is in the macrocosm. And so I realized that what was going on inside of my body was not, it was unique in some ways, in the sense that we each have our own really profound world going on inside of us that needs our unique medicine. But it was also reflective of the patterns of what was going on the planet, in terms of what I discovered when I uncovered the roots of what was happening inside of me, in the same way that our planet is out of balance in its elements and its waterways. For example, my blood was thick and full of toxins, just like the rivers of our world are full of toxins. The food that I had been eating was not properly mineralized, just like the soil on planet Earth is not properly mineralized. And the grief that I was feeling, that was unnameable and that I did not know how to talk about, is similar to the grief that planet Earth is holding. So, as hard as this all was to really be kind of boundaryless and to feel all of these things, I realized that I was not alone and I could embrace the journey of healing myself as also being a part of healing our planet. And as soon as I was willing to do that and turn towards the healing process, I very much was not alone. And I was given a lot of guidance from the spiritual realms, and also a lot of guidance through my intuition, which led me to find various sources of regenerative healing to apply to my body and my life, that helped me step and follow the breadcrumbs out of the deep, deep, deep pits of hell and back into life again. So I also learned that nothing is random, that the universe is ordered. Even symptoms are wise. So the severe inflammation that I had that was actually so bad that it essentially was crippling me. I had the body of a 90-year-old and my organs were on the verge of failure. And I had heart pain that made me believe that I was having heart attacks at night because of how severe the inflammation was. Being in my body was the last place I wanted to be. I even felt suicidal at one point because of how uncomfortable I was in my own skin. But what I learned was the inflammation was not the enemy. The inflammation was actually trying to rid my body of that toxicity that was in my tissues. It was actually having a reaction that was not silly or stupid or crazy, but that was actually responding to something real and trying to address a very real problem and not have it brushed under the rug and go about business as usual. Not that I could anyway, but I learned to recognize that the pain in my body was actually a wise response to what was going on. I also learned that it's not enough to make the symptoms just go away um, through suppressive medications, for example. If they're transformed, your life changes for the better because you integrate the lessons. So, for example, I learned that there were other things in my life that were out of alignment. Not just did I have toxicity inside my cells from having taken the vaccine and from other life choices I'd made earlier in life, but I had also was caught in toxic situations, ways of thinking, relationships, and habits that I needed to have boundaries around and change. And so when I integrated those lessons, I was able to gain empowerment, freedom, and strength. So instead of suppressing the symptoms, I alchemized them. Alchemy is the beautiful, age old art of transforming lead into gold. So, or transforming something of a lower density to a higher density or a finer, refined quality. And so the inflammation that was extremely painful and life threatening instead became my own sense of personal power and ability to take charge of my life instead of being a doormat or frozen in a victim or powerless position in my life. And then finally, I learned that when we heal, we regain our agency. That's that personal power. And when we become empowered, we free our dharma. And this is the most beautiful thing because I had been trying for so long to find my purpose. There was a big rift in my soul and body between what I was doing in my life and what I wanted to be doing, what would actually light me up, would actually come from the depths of my soul and make me feel like I was fulfilling the reason I came onto this planet in the first place. That's our dharma. It's our joyful, soulful contribution. And being sick forced me to completely let go of all of the ways that I was trying or striving to have some sense of meaning, but that were not ultimately coming from my soul. And so when I turned toward myself and I tended to my body and I tended to my inner world and gave myself the deep love that I had not received before and learned how to do that, and also learned how to do that for my tissues and for my body and my lifestyle and my habits, then I was actually able to witness the seeds of my dharma take root and start to sprout and start to flow up and out of me, not as an arduous, difficult, challenging, burdensome thing, but as this beautiful flower that just wanted to begin to blossom and come through me into the world. A very, very different experience of doing in the world than before. So, what makes the system regenerative? Here is how I define the regenerative paradigm. Instead of just targeting the symptoms of an issue, We bring health back into an entire system, and the symptoms rebalance themselves. Instead of just targeting the symptoms or the parts, the compartmentalized bits, we focus on bringing health into the entire system, and the symptoms rebalance themselves. In a regenerative system, wholeness is the default. Nothing is truly broken. Every part has wisdom. Regeneration is about integration, not elimination. In the regenerative paradigm, right relationship is the foundation. So this can be relationship within ourselves, between the parts of ourselves, our relationships with other people or beings, our relationship with nature herself, our relationship with time, and our relationship with our purpose. When a system, a regenerative system, is working well, the different parts work together in unified resonance. This is called coherence, and it's very much like a symphony in which the parts are free to fully self-actualize and become their unique sound, but they're also attuned to the larger field and the shared space and a desire to harmonize and create resonance between each other. So there's this beautiful integration of independence um, and togetherness. Another word for that is interdependence. So because the uniqueness of each part is supportive to the coherence of the whole, it makes it richer and more deep and more full of an experience. This is also could be considered a decolonized model of care, not pitting different groups up against each other, but really calling forth diversity as an experience that welcomes evolution. In the regenerative paradigm, life is rhythmic. We return to nature's rhythms and patterns instead of straying from them. And this is where my work with the nervous system really comes in. Because when we return to nature's rhythms, we provide the conditions for a system to reorganize and heal. So there's this real power to be discovered in aligning with nature's rhythms. And that is the rhythmicity, for example, even that something as simple as calming a baby by rocking them or humming to them and the vibration of that sound. There's a rhythm in there between two different things, that's not a tense rhythm, but a harmonic rhythm. Because part of being alive and alive on earth is that dance between opposites. And so when we find a healthy rhythm where those opposites are actually a pleasant and soothing experience to be living within, that is when so many of the things that are out of whack begin to realign themselves in a way that's much wiser than we could plan or effort our way with our left brain. So it's actually quite a right brain experience. And this is why we see also people, for example, who have Alzheimer's or other kinds of conditions where they've maybe lost their ability for that more left brain language capacity or recognition capacity or these kinds of things. But they're able to remember and perk up when they hear their favorite piece of music, or they're still able to find the steps of a particular dance that their body remembers, because at the foundation there is a rhythm that nature holds, which is indestructible and which, if we align with it, will help heal a lot of the things that have gone astray. And finally, the regenerative paradigm is one which is evolutionary. So because it includes and transcends difference, it's constantly evolving. It's not staying the same. It's always asking the question, how can we become even more coherent? How can we become even more intimate? How can we include this new level of something different um, that has that has presented itself in a way that is harmonic in nature and not trying to get rid of it? So regeneration creates the conditions for more vitality, creativity, and growth, not just fixing what's broken. It does have a reparative quality, but once something is humming along in that healthier rhythm, then uh, and that safety is established. We talk a lot about safety in somatic work and the nervous system, but safety is not an end in itself. Once safety is established, we suddenly begin to grow, just like a plant that has healthy soil will begin to spread its stem and its leaves and its petals up into the sky and continue to grow. And so the regenerative paradigm operates across all systems. I talked about how that affected my body, but really it can be anywhere from the tiniest microcosm of the cells of our body to the great larger systems of culture and planet. And so, because we define health in the system, according to the regenerative paradigm, as harmony between the parts of that system, a symptom in any system is actually a really interesting thing to pay attention to, because it's just a messenger that some kind of repair is needed. This is the part I'm going to skip through. It's quite an eye-opening experience. So check out the longer workshop if you want to do this. But this is the part in which we kind of go through the regenerative portal and look at all of the different ways that the old paradigm compares to the new paradigm, from body and health to family, relationship, parenting, schooling, work, the economy, larger cultural systems, spirituality and religion, the environment, and ultimately the planet. And so, in all of those situations, the issue is focusing on the symptoms versus focusing on the whole. And what I really want to point out is that in our time, regenerativity is also social justice, no matter which of these areas you apply this to. Because if you focus on the symptoms and call them bad and point them out as broken and try to fix them, that's the same as pointing to a group of people and saying those people are wrong and they need to be fixed. Instead of looking at the whole and seeing that there's something wrong with the relationships and how different parts of that culture or system um, are operating with coherence or not with coherence. So if you feel broken, it may not be because you're the problem, but because our greater environment is in dire need of restoration. Like a plant needs healthy soil in which to thrive, people need a healthy culture in which to thrive, right? So, and this quote by Tricia Hersey is really, really key. Because what I'm talking about is a radical new way of being an activist, not one that's using all of our. This is how I experienced severe burnout. I couldn't even walk to the mailbox. I couldn't even cut my own vegetables or vacuum my own floor. I couldn't even take a nap. And so, how the heck was I going to be an activist in the world? But what I learned was that there is a power of activism that I have and that we all have, no matter what position we are in. And that is that we can soften into the powerful proposal of thriving right now, right? Because something that all of the broken systems do is they take our life force energy and they steer it towards doing and doing and doing. Now, there is a good kind of doing, like I said, but that kind of doing arises out of a place of a safe and regulated nervous system that is thriving right now. And so, the most radical act of social activism that you can perform, the most radical act of resistance, is this: to soften into the powerful proposal of thriving right now. And so one of the ways that I do this in my work is through deep somatic trauma reprocessing, which is actually quite enjoyable because I define trauma as the gap that happens when we lose track of our true self and its interconnection with all things. So healing trauma is actually reconnecting with that true self and that interconnection with all things. When we heal trauma, we excavate buried treasure that enlivens and empowers us to channel our soul's purpose in the world. And so, in the same way that I learned that the microcosm is in the macrocosm is in the microcosm, and we can profoundly affect our world and our universe by changing the microcosm of this planetary world right here, which is our nervous system, which is what modern day neuroscience has finally learned, has caught up with the fact that ancient people knew this from time immemorial. And when ancient people, I don't want to put a generalization on everybody, and it's not my interest to romanticize indigenous people, but there are patterns in there that the indigenous part in all of us can recognize from prior to all of the colonialism and the trauma rifts that we've gone through over generations. And one of those patterns is that there is this idea, this concept that when a baby would be born into a tribe, into an indigenous community, the tribe would listen for that baby's song. Instead of just pinning something on them, they would listen they would observe the soul coming into the body and listen for their song. And so once that child had a song, then later in life, whenever it would go astray, out of alignment, instead of punishing the child, the tribe would simply sing or play the song back to the child, and that would remind them and bring them back into coherence. And so, because we don't have that kind of community in these days, unfortunately, because there's so much trauma in our post colonial world, we can, however, turn to nature and nature's codes and rhythms, which does remember how to reflect back our song to us. Maybe not in as beautiful as the same way that a human can sing to us, but we can also learn that, and we can become that tribe that remembers how to sing each other's songs to each other and wake up each other's natural blueprint once we've felt and received and know that for ourselves. So this is also akin to us choosing to heal our own nervous systems and the nervous systems of the loved ones in our community by reconnecting with our natural blueprint and recognizing that this is very powerful because we are living within nested nervous systems, right? I want to take us through a brief little experience of this now. So if you'll join me in just really like taking in like the whole of everything that I've shared, noticing how it's landing for you, noticing the concept of being in touch with your natural blueprint, in touch with your soul, in touch with that part of you that knows and remembers how to heal itself and heal the world, not from you efforting or striving or figuring it out, but where that just emerges naturally from you because you feel safe and settled within yourself. And even if you don't feel safe and settled within yourself, just noticing, first of all, how that concept is landing for you, that could be possible. And as you let that possibility land, we're just going to add a little bit of more layers of support. So the first thing that you can do is actually give yourself permission to kind of just relax back into your chair, into your seat. And notice how this present moment, we're going to do what Trisha Hersey recommends to soften into the powerful proposal of thriving right now. Notice what your body and your being enjoys about this present moment. Notice For me, for example, I love feeling the chair that I'm sitting in and how my body is receiving that support and not having to hold itself up. Maybe that feels good for you too. Or maybe what feels good for you is also allowing your sensorium to open and take in some of the light in the space, or the colors, or even the faces of people around you who are familiar and bring a smile to your face. And to take it even a layer deeper, you might notice that as I'm speaking, even though the words make sense to you, you can kind of even let go of the concept of the words and just hear the sound, just the vibration of my voice, and how amazing it is that this sound is vibrating itself out through my throat into this computer speaker and like landing and actually vibrating in your eardrum across time and space. And there's like a rhythmicity in that, and there is a receiving happening just from receiving the sound. And perhaps there are other sounds, like I hear the birds chirping outside my window. Perhaps there's even a really lovely silence that's nourishing too, a stillness. And as you feel the support of the present moment and the way that it's resourcing you and holding you and connecting with you and meeting you with you in these simple and gentle ways, you can also bring into your mind's eye or your felt sense the connections you have with the many people that you love in your life, family, friends, loved ones, near and far, including pets or special elements of nature or places in nature, and even people who have passed, wherever and however you might place their soul in time space, sensing those connections too. And taking a moment to savor and appreciate the feeling of being nested in support by all of those relations. And we might take it further to really the whole of planet Earth, Gaia, and her nutrients and elements, and the ways she nourishes us through water, stone, herb, flower, through wind, through all of our creatures, the way she feeds us, the way she waters us, and the way she holds us with her very gravity. And finally, we'll extend this practice out to include beyond our beautiful planet Gaia into our solar system and Milky Way galaxy, feeling the warmth of the sun giving life to this planet, observing the stars and the nebulae and the places of birthing and dying of stars, and the great mystery beyond which we cannot comprehend the edge of, but that continues infinitely outward in more layers of support than we could even imagine. And now, yeah, just taking a moment to really notice how that affects you, your nervous system, your sense of being right now. To take a moment to feel all these layers of support. Drink them into your nervous system. Do you notice more calm? Do you notice more energy? Do you notice more space in your mind? Do you notice more softness? What do you notice? Taking your time with this feeling, savoring it, letting yourself enjoy it as long as you like. I just want to say that this work is sacred. And I describe sacred as treating all facets of life with respect and cherishing. So the regenerative paradigm can also be defined as bringing soul or the sacred back into any ecosystem, whether that be a body, a family, a culture, or a planet. And when we live this way, we come alive. We come out of that frozen numbness of the compounded trauma and soul loss that has led to systems which are failing us today. We are able to restore our souls, heal the broken and abandoned parts within ourselves, reconnect with the living world, and find the magic that we lost. And we're able to build an oasis. When a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order. This quote, which is well known in systems thinking circles, is quite a hopeful one. We are doing so much more than we realize when we turn towards ourselves and when we build community and when we create these little islands of coherence, even with a handful of other beings, human or otherwise. It begins to change the symphony. You hear a different sound come through the chaos, which awakens and enlivens the natural blueprint in other areas that wake up too. So this is what I do in my body and soul sanctuary. Today, I will not be going into how we do this work, but know that this is something that is available if you're interested in remission, whether in the traditional sense or in the deeper sense of refinding your mission and riding this wave of evolutionary change with our eyes wide open. So if you are interested to explore further